All right, and we are back for episode 90, 90,
Wow.
Digital Divination. And we have a guest host today, Mr. Ron Lundeen, who is filling in for Jason, who has got a lot going on this week and asked if Ron could, by any chance, take time away from his busy vacation schedule to step in and talk some Starfinder.
You caught me. You caught me right in between some vacations, actually. So sure.
So thanks so much, Ron, for coming to do this. I really appreciate it.
Oh no, this is it's a delight to be able to step in from time to time again. I do want to point out, as I always do, that I'm an employee of Wizards of the Coast. But my opinions, things I say here are not their opinions.
They're your very own, right?
They're my very own.
Yes. So speaking of vacations, you just got back from Yellowstone. How was
We
that?
did. Oh, we did. It was fantastic. I went with my brother and his family, and we camped just outside of the park. And every day would go into the park to do one of the kind of cool things to do. Like one day we did geyser walks, right, where we went and saw Old Faithful and a lot of the geysers around there. We did some of the really fun hikes. We went to make sure that we could. We drove through where the bison are, and so we got some
Yes.
all together much too close with bison. And because my oldest is just starting to drive, and Yellowstone's roads are a little bit windy, but otherwise wide and kind of safe and not very fast, she was doing a lot of driving when sort of this bison kind of wandered right into the road, and so she had to suddenly practice right of way with an animal as big as our car. That was it was a surprise, but it was fun. She kept her cool. Everything was great.
Good,
Um,
good.
but we got to see some of the there isn't any other place like it, right? It's just so gorgeous with the mountains and the trees and the natural thermal features. Um, I filled along with some my along with one of my sister-in-law and my niece and nephew. We were filling out the junior ranger books to get a junior
Yeah.
ranger badge. Mine's downstairs, actually, but I completed 27 pages in the Junior Ranger books of activities and puzzles
Wow.
and little knowledge things. Um, so it's kind of neat. They have a real respect for nature and the animals that they instill in Yellowstone, right? Which is really great to see. It's really great to have my kids see that. I think this is my fourth time, twice as a kid, and this is my second time as an adult. And I see new things each time, and I love it every time.
Very cool. I kind of drove through part of it with some friends, kind of en route to doing something else. We were visiting some friends in Missoula,
Oh,
actually out
yeah.
there. So it wasn't too far out. Um, but I'd love to get back. And now that you're talking about it, and when you posted those pictures of the bison, I was thinking, man, it'd be great to do some wildlife photography up there as well.
There are a lot of people who are up there to do that. We didn't see a moose at all. We saw tons of bison, and they're in their rutting season, right? So there are a lot of the males are a little more aggressive, I think, than they usually are. Um, and But they still gather together. It's sort of fun. They we I didn't see a bear. Two of my kids thought they saw a bear at a very far distance, and I think they were probably right. At the time I was driving, eyes on the road. I'm not looking off in the distance.
Yeah.
But we were on a hike, and we definitely found bear scat. What seemed like there was a bear nearby, and we were appropriately equipped with bear spray and how to use it. We knew what to do. My kids knew what to do. But that was a little nervous hiking out of that spot. We're like, how close is this bear, and is it going to decide to wander back this way? Uh, it was neat.
Yeah, my daughter does a lot of hiking up in Canada. And this summer, she was doing some field work for her PhD and also just kind of hiking for fun. And she came across bears 3 times
Oh my
during
goodness.
right this summer already. Most of the time they weren't very close, but one time it was like right off the trail, and so it's like, okay, we got to kind of back away and make a long loop around.
Do they keep bear spray with them in case the
Yeah,
bears get close?
yeah, all the. In fact, she has to remember not to take it across the border because even though everybody in Canada has bear spray, right? they don't want you taking it from the US to Canada. That's a weapon that they don't
Oh,
want you
that's
to bring
right,
across.
yeah, and it's
Yeah,
pressurized and it's,
yeah,
really harmful. Oh, that's a good point.
yeah. So she has to remember about that, and sometimes she forgets and just doesn't mention it, I guess. I don't know. It's like always in the truck, right? Just kinda
Mhm.
when she's doing things. Well, that's awesome. Well, I thought, because we missed you in our last episode, you were on vacation then in Southern California,
Right. Oh,
post Gen Con.
I've been mushing all the vacations together. We actually ended up kind of collapsing. A lot of our vacations just ended up in August this year.
Mhm.
And so we went to Southern California and visited my wife's brother and his family, who are great. They're wonderful people. It was good to spend some time with them. And then right after, we went down to San Diego, where a
Mhm.
lot of my friends from high school and early college kind of got together as kind of a friend reunion,
Oh,
uh,
wow.
kind of
Nice.
reflecting the fact that all of us are have just or are about to turn 50, and oh my goodness, where has our youth gone? um but our kids got to know each other and play around. I We played an awful lot of games. We played a lot of one shot role playing
Mhm.
games that were a lot of fun, that really, and when I play those kind of one shot games, in sometimes it's sessions where a game where the session is intended to be only like 3 or 4 hours, and then you're kind of done and you
Right.
wouldn't play the game again. Um, it really kind of shows me some of the real deep things that role playing can be about, some of the things that are really that you kind of take for granted in like long form campaign style games, that you don't, that get really sort of compressed in with these one shots in a way that is really sort of enlightening. But that was kind of fun. And then we came back. We were here for I think exactly 3 days before we turned around and went to Yellowstone.
Yes.
And we're going up to one of the islands up near Canada right at the end of this month. So we were on our
Busy
way to the
times.
airport. Yeah, we were on our way to the airport at the beginning of August, and I told my kids, only 4 more vacations till school starts, um, because we pushed them all into August.
Well, I will say now this is really difficult to figure out temporally. I'm going to wish you a happy early but belated birthday because this is being recorded on Monday, doesn't
Right.
get posted till Thursday.
Well, then, happy belated birthday to you, because you had your birthday just what, like 2 days ago, right?
Saturday. Yeah, yeah. So, well,
So,
thank you. Yeah,
so it'll be
I was
not even a week ago when this gets posted. You'll be
yeah,
not even a week away out of your birthday.
yeah. I was telling Deb that I always thought we were the same age. I just feel like we're the same age,
No, you're real
but I'm
old, real
I'm a
old.
lot older than you though. So oh well. Anyway, but that'll be fine, and we'll have a get together. Actually, oh, I'll say this: I got you what I think is a pretty cool present, so you should act like it's really cool when you get it. Okay?
Oh, okay.
Okay, let's go. You don't have to. That's okay. But I was really excited. My daughter and her boyfriend came over yesterday to see The Office. It is
Mhm.
folks who normally watch the show might notice Mando is a lot closer because I shifted offices, thanks in part to help from my friends, including Ron Lundeen, who helped move things around at home. But I brought her up here and I said, "Oh, I have to show you this cool present I'm giving to my friend next weekend."
Oh,
So
well, I've got
anyway,
something for you that's still on the way. I'm hoping it'll show up
oh,
by the weekend.
oh,
But
ooh, now I'm
um,
excited too.
your
So
so not only is your bookshelves, you're closer to your bookshelves behind you. Your helmets
yeah,
are switched. Mando's switched. But you've still got
yeah.
all the Starfinder. Wait, let me see. What am I missing? And I'm trying to go from memory. Gloomhaven. You
Oh,
used to have
okay. Yeah, yeah.
Gloomhaven up on the shelf, and I don't see it there.
I gave that to Mark.
Okay.
So that when
We,
we came by and Mark saw you had Frosthaven up there, as I
uh-huh.
mentioned, oh, look, there's Frosthaven. And we were talking about playing Gloomhaven. So I had Gloomhaven. I got it from somebody else really inexpensively at a
Mhm.
garage sale. I never used it. And I said, well, Mark, would you play this with his house? And so I just gave it to him rather than let it sit on my shelf. And I needed shelf space. So,
It's good. Yeah, we played
yeah.
3, 4 sessions of Gloomhaven. We're into Frosthaven now. But I see you've still got all the all right, you still got all the Starfinder up where it is. You got a lot more Pathfinder. You've actually got more Starfinder even. Have you been making room for more stuff there?
Kind of moving things around a little bit. And also, I got a major donation from a former Paizo employee of a bunch of stuff that I donated the rest to our lodge, but I kind of went through. He gave like 6 boxes of stuff and stuff I
Wow.
didn't have. I went ahead and took some stuff worth just to fill up my shelves. I gave away a bunch to folks, Mark included, and then I donated the rest. Still 4+ full boxes. So I got adventure paths. I didn't have all the second edition adventure paths, so now I do. So I didn't have like the first 3 or 4 of them, and then I didn't have the small books, which I really like for taking
Yeah.
the conventions. So I got the small. He had a bunch of the small Pathfinder second edition books. I got those as well. That's kind
Yeah,
of
I prefer to use those. I actually don't know where a lot of my big rule books are. I use those small rule books much more often.
yeah,
Um, yeah, and the I mean, the Pathfinder Second Edition adventure paths. I mean, that's kind of what I did when I
right,
was there,
yeah.
and so I'm glad you've got them now.
Well, I'm excited for them to go to hardcovers. I hope the Pathfinder ones go hardcover as well. I don't actually know if they will. I know that the Starfinder ones, just because they fit so much nicer on your shelf rather than 3 or 6 books that keep when you try to pull one out, they kind of mush in and
That's
hard
right.
to.
That's right. And kind of fold a little bit back behind. I
Yeah,
do like the
yeah,
hardcover.
yeah.
They also tend to lay flatter when you're actually using them
Oh
around the
yeah, yeah,
table. The
yeah,
hardcovers I like
yeah.
a little bit better. But we've done the hardcover. Let's say they've done 2 hardcover Pathfinder Second Edition adventure paths, right? And I don't know if I don't know if they're doing it anymore. I mean, that's a Jason question, and he's not here.
I,
Um,
well, and that's a Jason question he can't answer as yet, one way or the other either. I think because nothing official has been said one way or the other. So.
that's
Uh,
okay. This is how a lot of the people are very good about keeping the secret sort of appropriately in when
mm,
they do their work as their employment as they're writing.
mhm,
I gotta say, I don't do any writing for Paizo anymore. My wife still does,
yeah,
and she does so sort of on her own in her front office. She'll very occasionally ask me, "Oh, hey, do you have these books, right?" And I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, it's probably something she needs for her writing, but she hasn't even done that for the last couple of projects because they give her all the books electronically that
right.
she needs to write, and that's just easier
Yeah.
for her to use. So I kind of had no idea what she's got going on. But I was after the Gen Con news, they announced that one of the core 20 deities in the Pathfinder setting was going
Right.
to die. And we happened to be driving somewhere, and I'm like, "Oh, hey, did you hear one of the core Pathfinder 20 deities? One of the core deities is going to die." And she's sort of suspiciously quiet about it. I'm like, "Wait a minute, did you know this was going to happen?" She's like, "Well, yes." I'm like, "Do you know which one it is?" She's like, "I'm not saying anything." I'm like, "All right, well, so yeah, she knows, but but she won't say because." Like the people that work on this stuff, they're really good
Yeah.
about, what's appropriate to keep secret and what's not. Um, I think that there are a lot of people working on some very exciting things, and it's really hard. It's really hard to be working on something that
Mhm.
just really speaks to your heart, or that something is going to be a ton of fun, and you can't say anything about. So, I'm excited to be able to start talking about the very first project I was on at Wizards, the Shattered Obelisk, which is coming out very, very soon. But of course, now there's a whole bunch of other things that I can't talk about, but I
Right,
will as
right,
soon as I
right.
can. It's just part of the industry. It's sort of a weird part of the industry, the silence.
Well, speaking of working on cool stuff that you can't talk about or maybe can now, you were working on Starfinder's second edition just for fun on your own.
Oh, it was. Yeah, this is something you'd hinted about. You're like,
Yeah.
somebody's working on. Well, let me tell you. Before I was, and there wasn't anything I could do with it, right? Except maybe play with my friends. And I was thinking about, just to the point of like, where could I do some play tests and stuff. But Pathfinder Infinite, which is sort of the clearinghouse for people's personal projects, and Starfinder Infinite is a really, really robust marketplace with some really neat stuff. And one of the things that I noticed even before I left Paizo, I'm like, hey, people are publishing things like Solarians of the Inner Sea and Witch Warpers of the Inner Sea, translating these Starfinder classes into Pathfinder 2nd Edition rules. It's not going to be hard, to compile those together, because Pathfinder Infinite is intended to be sort of a sandbox where if somebody publishes something under Pathfinder Infinite, you can then use it, make full use of it in Pathfinder
Hmm.
Infinite. I mean, and in your home games, of course. But so it wouldn't be hard for somebody to take the right kind of pieces and put them together and then make a Starfinder Second Edition using the Pathfinder Second Edition rules. And one day when I was feeling particularly, like creatively challenging myself with that kind of thing, but not a lot of immediate time, a lot of time pressure for other things. I'm like, I wonder if I could do that. So I kind of started pulling that together, and this was a couple months ago. And the more I pulled it together, the more I thought it was actually both really easy and really hard, because some of the things translate over very easily. You want to do a mechanic in Starfinder? All right, it's the inventor from Pathfinder Second Edition, right? So the fact that the mechanic has what's their core choices, like a thing in their head or a
Right.
drone, but they've
Right.
since expanded that the Starfinder mechanic can also have armor or a weapon.
Weapon. Yeah.
Well, the inventor creates a drone. Well, they call it a companion. They create a drone or an armor or a weapon. That's kind of the same thing, right? And then you take all the rules for a Ratfolk, and there you've got your rules for Yosoki, one of the core races in Starfinder. Some of the things, it was just a matter of sort of reskinning. Reskinning stuff is something that I've done a lot throughout my gaming history. I think that a lot of Hobgoblin and Orc ancestry feats fit very well for Vesk. Um, the they just produced a race of little telepathic rhino people, the Kashrishi, I want to say, for the Impossible Lands.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and the Kashrishi are all about sharing their emotions and working together and being psychic, right? That's kind of Sheeran. The Sheeran and
Hmm.
Starfinder are kind of like that. So with those as kind of examples or templates, you kind of build up a Sheeran. I was able to build up a Sheeran ancestry. Um, so it was, some things could be kind of ported over pretty easily. Some things could be sort of reskinned fairly easily. And then some of the things required some reinvention that I found really kind of exciting. An example is making the Mystic as the cleric chassis, because the cleric, you pick one of two in Pathfinder Second Edition's cleric. You pick one of two. You're either a war priest or cloistered cleric, I want to say, and that defines a lot of your combat ability, and it defines a lot of uh, your proficiency ranks or your proficiency level with your spell casting and things like that. Once you've made that choice, but those seem like they should be two of several different options, and when you
Right.
kind of blow up the cleric class with the intent to have all these as individual options that you can pick, and instead of harm or heal as your spell, maybe your divine font gives you harm or heal, or something that lets you access knowledge, right? You've kind of built an Akashic Mystic.
Hmm.
Or Magic Missile, you've kind of built a Star Shaman Mystic, kind of blowing up all of the features, tearing it apart, and then kind of rebuilding it is something that I'm not only worked really well when I was trying to build a Mystic for a my own private Starfinder Second Edition, but it's the kind of things that we're doing sort of professionally at Wizards of the Coast. I mean, one of the things, if you'll forgive me delving into Fifth Edition for a second, all clerics, they take their cleric domain, gives them at high level either you're kind of better at casting cantrips or you're better with weapons. And in the Unearthed Arcana to present the cleric for 2024, the latest version of that we've seen takes that choice away from the subclasses and kind of makes it an every cleric gets to pick that one or the other. And so I
Mm-hmm.
thought, oh, I'm mixing up what is sort of the subclass feature with the base features, which is really kind of what the Starfinder Mystic has several different subclasses,
Right.
you might say, and how they mix with the basic features of the cleric class. I found that to be some of the most thrilling design, because there's kind of feel like I was really rolling up my sleeves and getting my hands into the guts of the class tearing it down and rebuilding. That was kind of neat. It's a good creative outlet for me.
Yeah, it's interesting. And the reason why you have to do this is you used to spend a lot of your time freelancing. That was a
Right.
creative outlet for you. And now Wizards of the Coast doesn't allow you to freelance publish, right?
Right. Right.
Oh, so
That is, yeah, that's so a lot of my time I've got to be creative. I'm thinking my own individual projects, gaming or otherwise. If I were to turn my camera and open this door, you'd see a whole lot of potting soil and plants
yeah,
that I'm going to put up around the edges of our deck. So
nice.
I've got a lot of other free time as well, which is itself of significant value. So, but yeah, but I don't get bit by the creative bug any less frequently now than I did 1 year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Even before I started working at Paizo, in addition to freelancing for Paizo, I was running my own third-party company, Run Amok Games, for whatever ideas I wasn't working on for Paizo, but I couldn't get out of my head. I'd put them into something and then do it third party. So
Mhm.
I'm not stopping.
But getting circling back to Starfinder Second Edition, so I just thought it was really interesting because you shared with me your compendium so far, and at that point, I think it was about 130 pages
Hmm.
that you had put together. So it was a not insignificant amount of thought you put into it, and the formatting layout was quite nice, by the way. So,
Oh, that was all. That's not. I mean, I say that's not me. It was kind of me, but it's mostly the Starfinder Infinite program,
yeah,
which gives you Word templates. Everything I did was just written in Word, but it's just put
yeah,
it in the right styles, kind of as you
yeah,
go.
yeah.
Um, Anything to make a independent contributor's graphic design work easier makes the final product look a lot more professional and makes people the easier it is the the less people are likely to see a hurdle of presenting something professional looking, and they're more likely to get involved. And this game's better with everybody involved. So,
Mhm. Now you've talked about some of the things that you thought would be fairly easy with the compatibility component, right, between
mhm.
Starfinder Second Edition and Pathfinder Second Edition. Well, stepping back from that, even, you think that's a good idea
To take to make the conversion over, or
to have
from
it
Starfinder 2.0, or have it easy.
to have it compatible,
Yes.
Starfinder Second Edition compatible with Pathfinder Second Edition? Because I know that that was not something everybody was on board with all the time. Apparently, sometime maybe in the past, people this idea had come up, and maybe there were some people kind of weighing in. Maybe it should be completely its own thing. So, but
Well, I think yeah. I'd be interested to hear what you say. And I was sort of like unequivocally yes, and then I thought, well, no.
yeah,
Let me qualify. I think yes, but that's only because I run a lot of home games in which creating things sort of spontaneously for the home game and reskinning things, both in what I run and in what people play, are fairly common and acceptable, right? So,
mhm,
in a game where they are both very similar, very compatible, if somebody comes to me when I'm running Starfinder 2.0, let's say, and they say, I really want to be a full on psychic character, but the only way I can see to do it is to run the psychic class from Pathfinder 2nd Edition. I'd be like, sure, right? Works for me. Yeah. But there are a lot of people, the no comes in with a lot of people who are in official sanctioned organized play events or the like, where the rules have to be a little tighter because there's a substantially larger community that's following them.
mhm.
And in that case, that's not the situation where you want somebody to say, "Oh, I've made a orc psychic and I want to play him in Starfinder." I mean, that's no. There are species you use in Starfinder. No. The answer there is going to be no. Ought to be no. And I can see why people who are in that environment who don't want just any old thing thrown in would probably be, let's keep it our own separate thing. I don't know, but what do you think?
Well, I like the compatibility part. I actually think it's more of a marketing thing than anything else. Quite frankly, it lowers the barrier for Pathfinder Second Edition players to get into Starfinder.
Hmm.
Right now, it's about a 5-to-1 ratio. I was just actually looking at tickets sold at Gen Con.
Okay.
There were like 2,300 tickets sold for Pathfinder Second Edition events, and 750 tickets sold for Starfinder events. Right,
Okay.
so that's roughly actually 3ish to one at that point.
You're a 4 to
But
1. A quarter of them sold are
yeah, but
Starfinder. Yeah.
that's about what it's what. And now that said, both of those were a lot less than Wizards of the Coast things. I'll leave that
Well, and
out
that's
there as
not
well.
even. That's done
Yeah,
through Baldman
Adventures League
Games. Yeah, the
or
Adventures
whatever
League
it
is run
is.
through
Yeah,
Baldman. Yeah, there's a lot of
yeah,
organizations that really have shouldered that. But still, I think that I man, I think you're onto something there because the number of times I've been at Gen Con or some other convention where I've thought, all right, the stuff I want to play is sold out, but if I could get into this other game that requires virtually zero
hmm
heavy lifting for me suddenly learning a brand new system, I'd be really inclined to try that.
right. So I think that's if that's the only reason, then that kind of bothers me a little bit, right?
Okay.
So rather than let's make the game as cool as we can and people want to play it to play it, they say, well, let's step back and just make it an easier transition because I know personally a lot of Pathfinder players that have been slow to adopt or hesitant to even jump in to Starfinder just because they perceive it as being too different. And for me, it's like if you play Pathfinder First Edition, Starfinder is not going to be hardly anything
Right.
different for you. I mean, Pathfinder Second Edition is way different than Pathfinder First Edition compared to Starfinder. You know?
Right. Well, or third
So,
edition D&D, 3.5
yes,
edition D&D. A lot of
yeah,
those you can really see the DNA
right.
in Starfinder. You can see the DNA in Pathfinder First Edition. And so the barrier is kind of low. So
Now, all that said, I think it would be really cool to bring in Pathfinder Second Edition characters into Starfinder. I think going that way, if there's balance between the two systems, I think you could come up with a lot of great storylines when you all of a sudden you had somebody from some archaic world come in and then they have to learn the function and do stuff, but they had really powerful magic or skills or something that enabled them to adapt and learn that new system, right? I think going the other way is a little tougher, right? Bringing high tech into a low tech area, and then, and Jason and I talked about this a little bit, you
mhm.
know, how do you then replenish those high tech things when you don't have any resources for doing so, or
Right.
very
How
limited
do you
resources?
find another bullet to replace the bullet you just fired out of your high tech gun when you
Yeah.
need like all sorts of thermal charges and things in that type of high tech gun?
Yeah. So I think that's a little tougher spin. Um, I think it can be done. I'm just thinking thematically and everything. That's a little harder to do. For a big campaign kind of thing.
Right.
But I think the other way, if you had a Pathfinder character you just absolutely loved and wanted to try it in Starfinder and it would work, I think that would be fantastic.
Well, I think going the other way from the high tech to the low tech that you describe, I mean, it's difficult. But if I think I know you well enough to know, John, that's actually kind of right up your alley, right? Because that would be sort of the like future
Yes.
apocalyptic
Yes.
wasteland kind of
Yes.
thing where
Exactly.
you're scrounging for bullets and batteries to make your awesome power armor work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things I thought of right off the bat. But just in general, in the general course of play, though, just
Mhm.
bringing in that character in to a game, it I just don't know how the balance would look. I'm just thinking if I bring a tenth my if I bring in my 10th level Vanguard in to it,
Mhm.
a Pathfinder game designed for 10th level, just seems so overpowered now
Right.
relative
But
to
would it
that.
be right? Well, no, I think
Yeah,
that's
that's
probably
what
right.
just
I
so
think it's probably
balance. I
right.
just don't know. I just don't know what the balance. They're gonna have to
Well,
do a lot of balancing to make that work.
mhm. Yep.
And it almost seems like that's an awful lot of creative energy being spent
Just
just
to
to
keep things
do it.
even.
Yeah. So that's
Well,
my qualm.
one of the things I know, they're giving themselves a really long lead time for Starfinder Second Edition, and it's because they're not. I would bet that in zero cases they're going to do sort of the easy cheat way I did. That is to say,
Yeah.
an inventor looks a lot like a mechanic. Let's cut and paste the inventor and slap the word mechanic on it, and we're good to go. I mean, they're not. They're going to be building it from the ground up based on their system, is what I think. If there's things about the drone companion, or excuse me, about the inventor's companion that works. Maybe we'll see those in sort of a different flavored way as a drone. But I certainly don't think that they're just trying to put together I guess a hack, I guess is what the role playing term is, right? Using one system for another. They're not doing a hack. They're trying to put some ground up thought, uh, not ground up thought, but thought from the ground up about how
Yeah.
those things are going to be built. For example, how a Vanguard at 10th level in Starfinder 2.0 would compare to characters who are 10th level in Pathfinder 2.0. Now, it does make me wonder if they're going to have some of the same thinking that went into Starfinder when they were building it off of the Pathfinder First Edition chassis. And one of the things, as an example, they said is, look, this is Starfinder. We've got a lot of laser guns, so we're just going to do away with the rule that penalizes you for shooting into melee with your friends. Because
Right.
everybody's going to be shooting into melee with their friends. And we're not going to make special movements like being able to swim or climb or fly the purview of high level character or mid to high level characters only. We're going to make those kind of easy and pretty common at much lower levels so that people can be a lot more mobile. Those are ways in which a Starfinder character kind of outshines a Pathfinder First Edition character. And I don't know if they're going to be making similar things to say in Starfinder 2.0 compared to Pathfinder 2.0. I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I'm looking at we're playing with Abomination Vaults at 10th level, and and I've played my Vanguard at 10th level. I just looking at a champion at 10th level or paladin at 10th level versus my Vanguard. Man, my Vanguard eats them alive. I mean, in terms of
Yeah,
you know providing defense or mitigating damage or doing damage, and so there's
yeah, I
going to
think
have
you're
to be
right.
some sort of scaling that's going to change. And so maybe it's compatible, but they say, okay, when you bring in your Starfinder character, we have to scale everything down by half. Something I don't know. You know,
I don't know what
yeah,
sort of if they want to have that kind of conversion or not. Remember, they've separated the two not only in time, but with the vast plot gulf of the gap.
right,
Right? What
right,
happened then? That's a thing that keeps the streams from crossing. No, you got a good point though. I'm playing currently in a Skull and Shackles campaign that's playing Pathfinder First Edition, and I would totally take my Starfinder precog, who's about the same level,
yeah.
over my character in that one for the purposes of like defeating enemies and stuff. So, um, yeah, you've got a good point there that the scale feels it feels off, and it feels like perhaps appropriately the higher tech futuristic side of it has an advantage over the lower tech sort of sword and sorcery fantasy side of it.
And if they scale that back, making the math super tight for Starfinder Second Edition, how much does that decrease the fun? That's when you're used to. It's going to be the same thing with Pathfinder First Edition going to Second Edition, right? There were some really crazy characters out there that did all kinds of, you know,
Mm-hmm.
tons of attacks of opportunity and lots of extra damage and all kinds of things that don't exist now in Second Edition. And so maybe that's what it looks more like is on the outskirts of things that that's completely gone. But in the middle of things, maybe it's balanced more. I don't know.
Right, right. The min maxers are going to min max no matter what, right?
Right.
And
Right.
whether they're doing that, trying to one thing that I found one comment that I got at Gen Con when we were releasing Pathfinder Second Edition that was actually, I think it was really cool. I don't know if the person was intending this to be pretty cool, but this person came up to me and said, I'm looking forward to your game so that we can make the most busted characters imaginable because we made the most busted characters imaginable under Pathfinder First Edition and we're going to do it again. And my attitude is good, right? They won't be the same types of characters, I promise you that,
Mhm.
but every system has certain combos in which they things tend to feel a lot more broken than maybe the characters that are built as examples or as iconics or sort of a
Right.
using only the core rulebook or whatever you want to do. That's good. Those are going to exist, and some people's fun of the game is finding that, right? So a good game is built with the ability for people who love feeling like they've got the most busted characters to be able to build those types of characters, or they won't find the game very interesting.
So, kind of along those lines, what are some of the things that you look forward to seeing in second edition? And one of the things that you think it absolutely should have as it goes along that maybe they aren't thinking about, or you know, that sort of thing.
Why don't I think both of my answers for that are the same,
Okay.
in that Starship Combat. If
Yes.
I had to tell you the one part about my own sort of personal pet project of Starfinder Second Edition that I just had no idea how I was going to do it, and frankly hadn't even, I sort of mentally put it aside as, you know what, I'm not even going to do it. It's Starship Combat. Now, are there vehicle rules in Pathfinder Second Edition? Yes. Exploration as far as moving around, maybe with a starship as much as on foot. Yes, but how a robust starship combat and exploration system works in Starfinder 2.0 is going to be really necessary, and
Mhm.
I have no idea how they're going to do it. How about you? What do you think? Really, what are you really looking forward to in Starfinder 2.0, and what are you most excited about them bringing to kind of the game ecology?
Wow. So the game ecology. I'm not even sure I know what that means. So, um,
Tech of
but
the game. Now
yeah,
let me explain. Let me unpack that. Precogs are
yeah,
fascinating because they have the ability to pre-roll ahead of time and use their
yeah.
pre-rolls to swap out for a lot of different abilities, and more of them as they get higher and higher level. No other class in Starfinder can do that. There aren't very many role-playing games in which that's usable at all. So that really, I feel like, developed the ecology of the game it into a new way of playing the game that didn't exist. So when I
Ah,
say that, I mean, what things do you think Starfinder Second Edition can create that can make Pathfinder Second Edition games cooler if you were to use that sort of across the way? Does that make more sense?
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Okay,
know.
I
I
surprised you with the
no,
term that.
it was a great word, and I'm thinking, what exactly does he mean with that? Because when I think ecology, I think of plant life and biology and wildlife and stuff like that.
Right.
But I know that's not what you meant, and so all right. So I think that the basic things that I think how they announced it with the three action economy, I think that's great. So I think that part. Um, this hasn't been brought up as much, but I really like the crit system, crit success, and then even the failure system that's in second edition. So I think that's a really fun thing as well. Um, I like you. I'm not a fan of how they do Starship Combat or chases. I actually don't like how chases
Oh,
run at
yeah.
all. I don't know how they're going to fix that. I they've announced a narrative Starship Combat for Starfinder Enhanced. I prefer, and oftentimes I just do things narratively anyway. I prefer that this instance, but I would like something. And you mentioned hex exploration. I would like something where we could do world building, space station building, real starship building, where that became a function of what you did in the game, right? So right now it's like you
Oh.
build a character, you build a starship. That's part of it just to do it. I played games when I was a kid where you would build entire starships, or you would kind of build a world from scratch. We're start at low tech and kind of build up the technology over time. I think those sorts of things. Now it's a lot different than the main role playing part. I think those sorts of things are something that we could do in Starfinder Second Edition. That would be a lot of fun and is translatable to Pathfinder. So, if you think about building up your kingdom, when we were playing D&D back in the day, when our characters were really high level, instead of going out and slaying dragons, we started building up our keep and building it to defend against enemy forces and doing all kinds of stuff like
Mhm.
that. Or, I remember playing, we played Gamma World, and one of the things we played is in a world of super tanks. There's a book called Bolo, the series of super tanks. It was all about scrounging parts and building together a big super tank and things like that. And then you had tank battles. So similar to like you might have mech battles and stuff.
Mhm.
And so I guess looking at other things of scale that you could do in a high tech area. I really enjoy. the Expanse television series. You know, it's kind of really high science, you know, low fantasy to that. But one of the cool things about it is, you know, they go out and, you know, they get a ship, they outfit a ship, they take over other ships, they do other things. And when you capture that stuff, you do something with it. You just don't convert it into upgrades for your own ship. You know, there's a
Right.
purpose beyond that. And so having that as a component, I think in the game would be really cool. Maybe beyond the scope of a role playing game, but that's something I would enjoy.
Well, that's really neat, and that reminds me a lot of science fiction computer games, which often
Yes.
involve, all right, it's not just a matter of I've captured this ship, I'm going to transfer my cargo over and fly around it. Although some of them are. It's like, how do I make this ship that's mine? And how do I get to a space station? And what are we going to add on to our space station to make it
Hmm.
ours? Defensive posts versus,
Right.
trading
Exactly.
centers and things. That is a really key element of a lot of sci-fi media, I think, that would players would really enjoy. That would be a really neat addition to the game ecology
So
of
that's
being
my
able to build that
suggestion
stuff.
for game ecology. Once you,
Oh, I like that. And that could be translatable back too in a way where something kind of quasi like the Kingmaker, right? Where you're trying to build your
right.
own kingdom, but really more like, all right, we're going to build our own airship and travel the world
Hmm.
in our own airship. What does it
Hmm.
have as far as defense? Our own pirate ship. We do a lot of
Right.
that. I mentioned playing in a Pathfinder First Edition campaign of Skull and Shackles, right? So a lot of times every time we take over another pirate ship, we're like, do we make this one our new pirate
Yes.
ship versus our old
Yes.
one? But gosh, we've got all these flaming skulls that we've made on our old one. How do we? What are you going to unbolt every single flaming skull and nail it to the new ship? That's a lot of work. I mean, but it's in the theme of making it our own.
Hmm. Yeah, that's one thing. You know, I never played Kingmaker, but we are playing Horizons of the Vast.
Hmm.
And part of it, you know, when we're building up the settlement and stuff, that's kind of neat, but it's still really abstract.
Hmm.
You know, just kind of like, oh, we're going to build all this stuff so we can get our space elevator, right?
That's right.
So,
Some characters that have their own specific mini goals in
yeah,
mind.
you know, but it didn't really feel tangible doing all those individual things. It was just all, you know, you don't see us using them a lot. They don't become a very integral part of the campaign. Space elevator might, you never know. Um, but
Well, it's
you know,
it's
kind of like that.
also the way that you trigger. And I remember Kingmaker in Pathfinder First Edition being similar to this, and I haven't done Kingmaker in Second Edition. I've got it. I might run it someday, but um, exploring into a new hex or expanding where you've explored is how you trigger new events happening.
Hmm.
And it's not that there aren't events, or there certainly aren't many, that are triggered by building specific things or developing specific stuff. If there were, for example, oh, well, the first time you try to build, I don't know, a museum, the following role playing event occurs where people are accusing you of putting on display cultural heritage or something. And you can see how it could start out like a
Right.
whole subsidiary adventure based
Hmm.
on, oh, we decided to build a museum in this square in our settlement, or maybe the third settlement you build, right? Oh, well, at this point, there's enough cities in the area that the following crime family decides to sort of make a
Right.
play, and here's not enough of the events are triggered by the actual building that you do. And I feel like a good, solid sci-fi system like you describe could absolutely do that. Well, your space station gets thus and such big, it's attracted the attention of a crime syndicate, or oh, you've decided to install this type of, Vogon anti-personnel laser on the side of your ship. Well, all right, well, this particular alien group comes by because they're offended that you do that or something like that. That's ways that the decisions that you've made and how you build
Yeah.
stuff leads to the story, not just an abstract building game.
Right. Right. So anyway, that's kind of a thought about it there. I am excited about 2.0. I think there's a lot of neat things that are in Starfinder, but I can see where they can go a lot of different directions. I'm just excited to see where they go.
Yeah. Well, and it may be with anybody that's creating a new game can't get to everything all at once in the core rulebook. And so one of the things that's going to be interesting to me to see what they choose to tackle when they update it and what they don't.
Hmm.
And to some degree, this has to do with the Pathfinder remastered that they're doing, what they're choosing to put in which books and what's in the game GM's core versus what's not, versus what's in a later book versus what's in an adventure path. Um, that kind of thing is we're going to see that in Starfinder as well. And what they choose to leave out right away is, I think, going to be almost just as exciting as what they choose to put in, because that's a thing they're going to have the ability to touch on in sort of a more robust story focused detail.
Hmm.
That is to say, something, if they don't put mech combat in the first book, are they going to do mech in some high technology book later on, a la the technology guide? Are they going to do it in a series of adventures that are about mechs, a la Mechageddon? Right? That could be kind of fun to see how it develops.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I'm curious to see about that. It's a completely new team. I mean, Thirsty's the only one that was really on that team last time when Starfinder was put together.
Hmm.
But I know that Jason Bowman is probably having some input. Mark Seifner isn't there as a designer, so it's probably going to have some differences, which I think will be
Yeah.
good.
Well, and I think the people that are going to be really benefiting from Starfinder 2.0, I mean, I think everybody who plays it is going to benefit from having a more robust and updated system if they choose to do that. But a lot of the people that are on the Starfinder team now kind of came up through organized play, Thirsty included. And so I feel like the organized play component of what you can get out of Starfinder 2.0 is going to be really solid, because that's kind of where they sort of grew up from in coming to the positions that they're at now. So,
Yeah, what they've done in the last couple of years is really built more coherent storylines
mhm,
across them. I mean, just for example, the Scoured Stars storyline that Thirsty put together is now going to be an adventure path, and I think
mhm,
you know thinking of that as a rather than a series of disjointed adventures, which what the first season of Organized Play really felt like. Now we're going to have several big overarching arcs that tie things together right from the get go,
mhm.
which which I think is fun.
Well, if it felt a little bit disconnected, it's because we weren't necessarily all talking to one another. Speaking as someone who wrote one of those first season adventures, and
Wrote one. You wrote the first one
the very
ever.
person into the unknown, right?
Yes. And it
Uh,
was very much so. And that was like the hardest one for any first level character. So, because it's
you're
Starship Combat.
that's right. You're welcome, I guess. That was
You were the one that caused them have to change all the rules on Starship. So,
I look. I just doing what the rules had that were given to
yeah.
me. That was
Yeah.
It was good. But we knew even then when I was doing this, one of the things they said is this is going, if Starship Combat's going to evolve, and this is at some point going to seem a little simplistic and maybe a little outdated, but we got to start somewhere.
Yeah. No,
So
that's good. And they've learned a lot since then. So I expect things to be much more polished
let's see.
for the
We'll
second
see.
edition coming out. Well, it's been great, Ron, catching up with you. It's too bad Jason couldn't be here, but it's nice to have a chance to chat with you again.
Yeah, that is fun. It's fun. I appreciate you inviting me back for this time, and I'll drop in when I can.
Well, I'm John.
And I'm Ron, and this is Digital Divination.